All right, Commissioner, we have about 5 minutes left. I'd like to engage you in a little game show speed round on issues that if you were Lieutenant Governor, you would have to weigh in on.
I'm sorry, they told me it's time to leave.
No. You've seen these before. I'm very nice about this stuff. Don't worry about it. So let's go. You can give me long answers or short answers, but I want to ask you about a couple things that would be in your purview as Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
2/3 rule, for or against?
For it. I think it's a very important tool. It's been used in this Texas in this state for 100 years.
Except when they don't feel like it.
Well, I think history shows that it has been suspended time and again. But here's the real issue. If you're not for big government, if you want to be able to tap the brakes on the process, as a conservative, if you want to slow things down, having that 2/3 rule is a very good rule. But like all rules, there are circumstances where other rules are used as well.
Right.
And you have to get the business of the people of Texas done.
Right.
And there are some circumstances that history has shown that it doesn't work out for whatever reasons that might be. But as a general purpose, I think the 2/3 rule is a good one.
So as Lieutenant Governor, would you have permitted the 2/3 rule to be pushed to the side for voter ID?
Yes. If you cannot, after trying and trying, get it done. And let me tell you why. In Afghanistan today, to vote, you get photographed, you get fingerprinted, and you get frisked.
Right.
To walk into that voting booth to cast your ballot.
Right.
Evan, I had the opportunity just a few weeks ago to attend the first naturalization ceremony that I'd ever attended in my life. I saw 984 people from 105 different countries around this globe take the oath to become a United States citizen. These are very serious issues that we have, and that we have something special in America.
Right, but with all due respect,
when it comes to voter ID, we need to make certain that who is voting is who they are.
With all due respect, leaving voter ID aside, what is the point of having a 2/3 rule if it's only applied when you have enough votes to get past it?
So are you thinking that there are rules that you never change or you never modify?
No,
is that what you're saying?
but the issue with the 2/3 rule has been historically and currently that the folks who are in power, and it could be Democrats at some point, so the Democrats have to be careful not to get over their skis on this. But there's no point in having a tradition if you just push it aside when the issue on which about which you are concerned doesn't meet up with the votes that you've got in the Senate.
Before every legislative session, the House and Senate members, this is not something in our state constitution. It is a rule adopted.
It's really a tradition.
It's a rule that's adopted by the members of the Senate before each legislative body. Every time the House members meet, they get together, they have meetings, and they determine what the rules are going to be for this next session. Right. And that is in the prerogative of those members that are duly elected by the people of Texas. I prefer the 2/3 rule, but I do agree that there are circumstances, and throughout the history of Texas, it is shown that it has been suspended in certain circumstances.
Okay. I did say it was a speed round, and I'm already off my game on that. Senate budget.
I thought that was pretty speedy for the Senate issue.
You think so?
Don't you? Yeah.
Senate budget versus House budget this time. Which do you prefer?
Since the Senate budget only cuts us by 40% and the House budget cuts us by 45%, I'm for the Senate budget here, Evan.
You are?
Yeah.
But as a practical matter, the Senate budget is dead, isn't it?
I think, here's what I believe. Every conference committee, and I've been on many of them, have to get in there and look at the side-by-sides and see what makes sense.
Yep.
I believe at the end of the day, under the limited revenues that we have, that our House and Senate members will craft a budget that meets the spending needs that we have on the next 2 years. Right. Look,
but you like the Senate budget better?
I think the Senate has looked at ways to address some issues that need to be addressed. Yes.
In a way that you prefer to the House budget?
And I think we'll probably go more toward the Senate than what the House has done. But here's the deal at the end of the day. Washington has shown us what deficit spending will do. And we have to balance our budget within the available revenue stream that we have, and we have to grow our way out of the economy, out of this recession. Recessions are temporary, tax hikes are permanent. And I think both the House and the Senate have taken the appropriate posture in moving forward and solving this budget dilemma that we have.
What about the rainy day fund, which obviously was a hot potato during the whole session? Up until the very last on the Senate budget, there was discussion of whether the rainy day fund should be used to pay for the Senate budget, which is more generous in certain ways than the House budget. Would Lieutenant Governor Staples have advocated for use of the rainy day fund in this session to pay for the next biennium's budget?
I think I agree with what the Senate ultimately did in not relying on the rainy day fund. Let me tell you what Lieutenant Governor Staples would do about the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
I think it is a very good tool, and you know that every session the Legislative Budget Board sets a rate of growth that the spending cannot exceed based on the economic circumstances and what's forecasted. We have a rainy day fund that is a very prudent fiscal management tool. I think we need, at the beginning of each session, also to determine what we think the balance of that rainy day fund should be at the end of that biennium that's being budgeted. Let's get it out of the realm of the political football field, and let's use that fund for what its intended purpose is, as a fiscal management tool. A tool that should recognize we need a sound bond rating for the state of Texas. We know our federal government's juvenile spending practices has resulted in the long-term credit rating of the United States government being downgraded from stable to negative. We cannot allow that to happen. So criteria that I would look at, among others, would be to maintain a sound fiscal bond rating. We need to allow for contingencies such as hurricanes that happen, contingencies like wildfire, and look at what the rate of growth and what the overall economy is doing. So I would like to see the rainy day fund, just as our rate of growth is established, to let's determine what that rainy day fund should be at the end of that period as well.
There are a lot of people, Commissioner, as you know, who look at the budget shortfall we have and what are unprecedented cuts to social programs, and they say, if it's not raining now, when's it ever going to be raining?
That's right. We have difficult circumstances today. My agency...
But you still wouldn't touch it.
My agency last week had to give notices to over 10% of our workforce, but that their jobs aren't funded for the next year.
But you'd rather leave the money in the state savings account than save those jobs or save the jobs of public school teachers potentially?
You can't solve short-term problems without long-term thinking.
Right.
And we do no one a disservice if we put our state in fiscal matters that causes even greater danger 2 years from now. So the way to solve that is to forecast what that's going to be, just like we do the rate of growth, and to remove that from the political arena. Today, the Senate budget, planning on using the rainy day fund and not using a higher portion of the rainy day fund, is still at the same level of spending, so we're still there in terms of spending priorities.
All right, let me ask you about another thing here. Campus carry. You've been a big advocate for gun rights over the years. You know that Senator Wentworth, in the end, relentless as ever, got that bill attached to another bill.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
All he had was creativity left there at the end, right? So it now looks like campus carry will pass over the objection of the majority of leaders of higher education institutions. So explain to them and to us why, despite their objections, this is a good bill.
Well, I think the people that ultimately get to say are the voters of Texas. And those are the ones that we're ultimately responsible to, not to any one particular group.
So make it a constitutional referendum.
Well, the Constitution gave the legislature the authority to make those decisions, and the people in the legislature have the votes.
So the voters' support for this bill is implied?
Absolutely, by virtue of the members who are making those decisions. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution is very important. We cannot allow the irresponsibility of a few to impair the liberties of the many. And I don't have a problem with that. I remember being a member of the legislature when concealed handgun legislation was passed, and there were all types of comments about all the dangers that would happen. None of that ever proved true. None of it did.
So you don't have any concerns that are specific to campus carry as opposed to concealed carry?
Look, people have to be licensed, they have to be trained, they have to be educated, they have to know the consequences for inappropriately using our laws. I'm a concealed handgun carrier and licensee. There's no problems there that I've seen that have been articulated in a way that should cause the public concern or our higher education officials concern. And we haven't gotten much time to talk about public education and its role and what we're going to do with the millions of children in Texas that are not going to four-year colleges right now, unfortunately.
How about redistricting? Again, under the Lieutenant Governor's purview, you got to preside over the Senate. You may well be Lieutenant Governor if you serve a second term. You're elected in 2014. You may preside over a session in which redistricting is an issue. Senator Seliger put out maps yesterday that take it from 1912, ideally, to 2011 for the Republicans. A number of Democrats are upset about the way Travis County is being manhandled, about the way Fort Worth is being changed. What do you think about that?
Well, I think redistricting is political in nature. I carried the congressional redistricting bill in 2003. I remember after I was fortunate enough to be the author of that bill. I had someone come by my office and they said, I remember in 1970, they thought, who could we get to carry redistricting? And they said, we'll give it to Joe. He gets along with everybody. And he looked at me and said, and when he got through, he didn't have a darn friend left in the whole building.
Right.
And so redistricting is a tough process. Seliger is working through this process, and it's just about political in nature. I think most people would argue we really have 20 Republican seats and 11 today, and just had some issues on one side.
Wendy Davis's election was an anomaly?
I think so.
And you think that seat will
I think so.
You expect to come back? All right.
Yeah.